The foundation of the federal law enforcement apparatus is visibly crumbling, and the man entrusted with its absolute command is currently locked in a desperate, deeply humiliating battle for his own political survival. FBI Director Kash Patel is officially on the chopping block, entirely engulfed by a staggering cascade of scandals involving alleged chronic alcoholism, massive misuse of taxpayer-funded government assets, and a profound, terrifying dereliction of duty during moments of active national crisis. Inside the highest echelons of the White House, senior officials are no longer asking if Patel will be fired, but precisely when and by whom he will be replaced. He is, by every credible intelligence metric, a dead man walking. The irony is agonizingly sharp. A regime that actively relies on chaotic distractions to mask its catastrophic geopolitical failures in the Middle East is now finding itself suffocated by the sheer, unadulterated embarrassment of its top law enforcement official. You're about to hear the unvarnished, heavily documented reality of an FBI director who reportedly barricades himself behind locked doors, weaponizes federal jets for personal joyrides while active murder investigations stall, and fundamentally views the premier intelligence agency of the United States not as a solemn duty, but as a publicly funded Make-A-Wish foundation for his own fragile ego. Welcome to the staggering collapse of Kash Patel. To accurately comprehend the sheer magnitude of this institutional crisis, we must first analyze the desperate, highly transparent maneuvers Patel is executing to cling to his collapsing authority. The recent security incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, a terrifying event where gunshots rang out and the president was actively evacuated, provided a chilling glimpse into Patel's rapidly diminishing relevance. While the Secret Service aggressively moved the commander-in-chief to safety, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a man with absolutely zero prior historical precedent for even attending such a press-centric gala, was spotted aimlessly wandering the perimeter. He appeared utterly disconnected from the tactical response, looking less like the nation's top cop and more like a bewildered bystander cut off from the open bar. The live commentary broadcast during the event perfectly captured the profound confusion surrounding his mere presence, with journalists explicitly stating on air, "We do not know who invited him." Yet, Patel immediately attempted to shamelessly leverage his physical proximity to this crisis into a desperate demonstration of his supposed national security utility. He appeared in the media, desperately attempting to project authority, praising the president's supposed courage under fire. It was a transparent, deeply pathetic attempt to remind Donald Trump of his loyalty, a man desperately hoping that mere adjacency to a chaotic national security event would be enough to shield him from the impending axe. But the internet and the broader political ecosystem immediately saw through the facade. The mockery was instantaneous and brutal. Even prominent right-wing political commentators, typically steadfast allies of the administration, actively tore Patel apart. Figures like Eric Spracklin publicly noted the sheer insanity of the FBI director standing around outside the venue like a random, confused attendee while a massive security breach unfolded. Patel's attempts to project command presence completely backfired, entirely exposing him as a dangerously unqualified cosplayer completely out of his depth. This desperate grasp for relevance occurred in the immediate, deeply damaging wake of a disastrous press conference Patel held specifically to combat the explosive, highly corroborated reporting published by The Atlantic. The Atlantic article detailed a horrifying, systemic pattern of erratic, paranoid behavior, chronic absenteeism, and severe, unmanaged alcoholism that was actively paralyzing the operational capacity of the FBI. When directly confronted by reporters regarding his massive $250 million defamation lawsuit against the publication, Patel's response was not a presentation of exonerating facts, but a deeply embarrassing, flippant request for a literal show of hands from the press corps regarding who actually believed the reporting. The foundational irony of this massive legal maneuver is staggering. The very lawsuit Patel filed to supposedly defend his honor explicitly legally confirms the exact core incident he is loudly calling a complete lie in public. The Atlantic meticulously reported a terrifying incident where Patel attempted to log into an internal, highly secure government computer system, failed, immediately panicked, and initiated a frantic series of phone calls, absolutely convinced that Donald Trump had secretly fired him. The reality was a simple technical glitch. He had not been fired. However, the resulting chaos was profoundly exacerbated by the terrifying fact that no one within the Bureau could successfully reach him to clarify the situation. Patel has vehemently, repeatedly denied this event ever occurred on conservative media networks. Yet, his own $250 million legal complaint explicitly states that Director Patel had a routine technical problem logging into a government system, which was quickly fixed. He is legally confirming the exact technical failure while simultaneously publicly screaming that the entire narrative is fake news. He is essentially suing a major publication simply because he is deeply embarrassed that they accurately reported his subsequent paranoid meltdown. The intelligence community and internal FBI sources are painting a deeply terrifying portrait of a director entirely compromised by severe substance abuse. The Atlantic report, heavily corroborated by multiple internal witnesses, details multiple, highly disturbing occasions over the past year where Patel's own highly trained security detail had immense trouble simply walking him to a vehicle because he appeared severely, visibly intoxicated. The situation reached a critical mass of operational failure when his detail was reportedly forced to request heavy breaching equipment, the exact same tactical gear utilized by SWAT teams, because the director of the FBI was completely, physically unreachable, barricaded behind locked doors. This raises a fundamental, terrifying national security question. If the director of the FBI is completely unreachable, heavily barricaded, and his own highly trained security detail cannot physically access him, what exactly is transpiring within those rooms? The implications for national security readiness are catastrophic. Yet, when confronted with these severe, highly corroborated allegations, Patel retreats into bizarre, mathematically impossible deflections. During a recent interview, when pressed aggressively by Maria Bartiromo to definitively state whether he had ever been intoxicated or severely absent during his tenure, Patel engaged in a deeply disturbing third-person word salad. He completely dodged the direct question, stating, "This FBI director has been on the job twice as many days as every director before me. What that means is, I've taken half as many days off as those before me. What that means is, I've taken a third less vacation than those before me." This is not a defense. It is absolute verifiable nonsense. First, Patel has only held the position for a single year. Claiming to have served twice as long as every director before him is a staggering historical lie, entirely ignoring the 37-year tenure of J. Edgar Hoover. Second, claiming to have taken half as many days off and a third less vacation demonstrates a profound, almost childlike inability to comprehend basic mathematics, as those are simply two completely different, conflicting numerical metrics describing the exact same concept. But this complete abandonment of numerical literacy is entirely standard operating procedure for the current administration. We must look at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the individual supposedly overseeing the massive American public health infrastructure, struggling desperately during a congressional hearing to defend Donald Trump's mathematically impossible claims regarding prescription drug prices. When directly challenged by a senator on the absolute impossibility of reducing a price by 600%, a figure that would literally require pharmaceutical companies to actively pay consumers massive sums to take their medication, RFK Jr. arrogantly insisted that President Trump has a different way of calculating. He idiotically argued that reducing a $600 drug to $10 constitutes a 600% reduction. This is a regime entirely decoupled from objective reality, where basic arithmetic is aggressively rewritten to support the supreme leader's fabricated victories. However, Patel's mathematical illiteracy pales in comparison to his staggering, highly documented misuse of taxpayer-funded government assets. Internal FBI colleagues have reportedly dubbed him the Make-A-Wish director, not for any philanthropic efforts, but because he treats the immense power and vast resources of the Bureau as a personal, limitless slush fund to fulfill his own adolescent fantasies. The verified intelligence regarding his travel logs is absolutely sickening. Patel has repeatedly commandeered the highly expensive, taxpayer-funded FBI jet to attend NHL hockey games. He has utilized federal aircraft to make multiple, entirely unnecessary trips to Nashville, simply to visit his much younger country singer girlfriend. He flew the federal jet to Penn State University for the sole purpose of watching her sing the national anthem at a collegiate wrestling event before flying her back to her home city. And in a display of sheer, unadulterated hubris, he was recently caught on camera attempting to justify this massive abuse of power by stating that if he was actually abusing it, he would simply use the jet to go see every one of her shows, estimating he only attends about 15% of them. He views utilizing federal law enforcement assets for personal dating logistics as a completely acceptable standard perk of the office. This is the exact same individual who previously aggressively attacked his predecessor, Christopher Wray, for utilizing the very same aircraft for personal travel. Patel previously whined incessantly about the massive $15,000 cost per takeoff, posturing as a fiscal conservative determined to defund executive excess. Now, he is utilizing the jet to sit ringside at highly exclusive UFC fights as Donald Trump's personal +1, to fly his friends to Scotland for luxury golf trips, and to film various right-wing podcasts. The consequences of this massive systemic grift are not merely financial, they are actively severely harming active, high-stakes law enforcement investigations. The intelligence confirms a terrifying pattern of operational paralysis, directly caused by Patel's desperate need to play dress-up. During the highly sensitive investigation following the murder of Charlie Kirk, an internal whistleblower formally reported that the highly specialized FBI shooting reconstruction team was severely delayed by at least a full day. The reason? The necessary bureau planes and highly trained pilots were completely tied up, accommodating the director's personal, completely unrelated flights. Furthermore, when Patel finally arrived at the active crime scene, he explicitly refused to disembark from the aircraft until staff procured the perfect FBI raid jacket in his exact size, complete with the specific, highly visible patches he demanded for the cameras. When they could not immediately fulfill his absurd sartorial demands, he literally grabbed a female agent's jacket so he could aggressively stomp around the active crime scene in full tactical costume. He then further delayed the crucial investigation by complaining that the borrowed jacket lacked the proper patches, holding up operations until the active SWAT team surrendered their own gear to him. He is prioritizing his personal photo opportunities over the meticulous collection of forensic evidence in a high-profile murder case. This terrifying dereliction of duty is not an isolated incident. The whistleblower report explicitly details how Patel's profoundly misplaced priorities and massive mismanagement of critical aviation resources severely hampered the FBI's ability to swiftly respond to the tragic mass shooting at Brown University in December of 2025. The highly specialized evidence response team was forced to physically drive through the entire night in a severe snowstorm to reach the campus the following morning. Why? Because Kash Patel was currently in South Florida, utilizing one of the FBI's 2 primary jets for personal reasons, and had explicitly, selfishly ordered the second jet to be held entirely in reserve for a different team that would not normally even deploy to such a scene. He is actively sacrificing rapid response capabilities during mass casualty events to ensure his own personal logistical convenience. Patel's aggressive legal strategy to silence these horrific revelations has spectacularly, entirely backfired. By filing a massive defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic, he intended to intimidate the press and bury the story under an avalanche of legal fees. Instead, he has effectively lit a massive beacon for every single whistleblower within the federal government. The author of the explosive piece, Sarah Fitzpatrick, has publicly confirmed that since the publication, she has been entirely inundated with new, highly placed sources from the absolute highest levels of the government, eagerly offering massive amounts of corroborating information and expressing deep gratitude that Patel's systemic corruption is finally being exposed. The lawsuit, originally designed as a weapon of silence, is now a loaded gun pointed directly at Patel's own head. If this case moves forward into the highly invasive discovery phase, Patel will be forced to testify under oath, under the severe penalty of perjury. He will be forced to meticulously explain why his own legal filings completely contradict his aggressive public denials. The Atlantic now possesses an even larger, much more devastating arsenal of internal sources and verified documents ready to completely unload on him the moment he takes the stand. And Patel cannot rely on the courts to completely shield his reputation. A federal judge in Texas recently unceremoniously threw out another one of his massive defamation lawsuits, a case where Patel attempted to sue former FBI official Frank Figliuzzi for accurately stating that Patel has been visibly seen in nightclubs far more frequently than on the highly secure 7th floor of FBI headquarters. The judge correctly dismissed the lawsuit, categorizing the statement as protected rhetorical hyperbole. However, internal reports verify that daily critical intelligence briefings for the director have been drastically reduced from a daily necessity to a mere twice-weekly occurrence. The intelligence community is describing the atmosphere inside the Hoover building with a single terrifying word: absolute chaos. The public perception of Patel has completely, irrevocably collapsed. He is no longer viewed as a serious law enforcement official. He has been completely reduced to a viral, heavily mocked internet punchline. The proliferation of highly sophisticated AI-generated Lego videos depicting a bug-eyed, heavily intoxicated Patel chugging alcohol while the entire FBI burns to the ground perfectly encapsulates the utter destruction of his professional credibility. When internet memes are providing a far more accurate, truthful summation of your career than your own highly paid legal team, your tenure is completely, entirely over. The spectacular, highly public implosion of Kash Patel is not merely the tragic downfall of a deeply flawed, highly compromised individual. It is a terrifying, undeniable symptom of a much broader, systemic rot entirely infecting the current administration. Patel desperately demanded a $250 million retraction, but instead, he has effectively financed a massive, highly public highlight reel of his own profound, undeniable incompetence. He is documented as being heavily intoxicated at international events, completely missing behind barricaded doors during critical work hours, actively delaying highly sensitive murder and mass shooting investigations for personal joyrides, and utilizing the immense power of the federal government to play tactical dress-up for the cameras. He has thrust his own highly embarrassing history of alcohol-related arrests, including public urination, entirely back into the glaring national spotlight. The Federal Bureau of Investigation constantly professes the sacred principle that no one is above the law. However, when the individual tasked with leading that premier institution treats established operational rules as mere suggestions and utilizes the critical taxpayer-funded federal budget as a personal limitless travel fund for his own amusement, that foundational principle completely disintegrates into a deeply cynical, tragic punchline. Kash Patel is not a wronged public servant fighting for his honor. He is a deeply compromised, highly dangerous liability. His ultimate removal is no longer a matter of political debate, but an absolute, undeniable national security imperative.